This is the breakout for year one state capitol days. So if that's what you're here for, you're in the right spot. Thank you. My name is Liz Colavecchio. I'm the public policy coordinator in the DC office. And I'm joined by Michelle Toman from West Virginia, Amy Grasso from Texas, and Jim Biela from Alaska. I'm just going to do a short little excerpt about what state capitol days are, but the main focus of this program are going to be on these three lovely volunteers who have planned wonderful first year state capitol days this year. And they will explain what their days looked like, and then we'll go over some helpful hints and tips and pointers and some challenges that they had, just so that you guys can get a sense of how to plan the day and what they're like. And then we'll have a question and answer session at the end. So our state capitol days are a smaller version of the forum that you're at right now. We bring volunteers from across each state to the Capitol to educate the state and local lawmakers on AFSP's public policy priorities, suicide prevention issues, and mental health issues. This year we had 32 states host state capitol days, which was the most that we've had, which was amazing. 12 of them were first year states this year, so it's growing quickly. These states, each state capitol day, when you're planning an event, you contact our office to start, and you let us know that you're interested in planning an event. We help you with the calendar of your legislature because everybody's sessions run differently. So we help you look at that, and then we help you choose a date. And we do ask that your date is not around any other chapter events so that you are able to get more people to attend and not ask too many things of our volunteers at one time. Same for you because you're probably planning more than one event. So we want to make sure that it's easy for you. Let's see. Of the 32 events that we had this year, bills that were directly advocated for, we saw 9 get passed already. So our last event was actually last week. So they start in January and they run in the spring. So it's usually between January and May that you would host an event. We did have one pushback to June this year. So like I said, you'll work hand in hand with our office, you'll work hand in hand with your field staff and other chapter volunteers, and you'll want to put together a small group of volunteers to help you plan the event, because there's going to be different parts, just like any other event that you would plan, like a walk or an ISOSL day. It's nice to have a small committee to help you plan. You don't want this all falling on one person. There is a planning handbook that we created last summer that was available for the first time this year. Yay! And that takes you
Thank you, really.
basically step by step. Anything that you might want to know is in that handbook, and that is available on Chapterland. And we also have it through email if you needed a copy if you don't have access to Chapterland. And the day really is, if it's your first year, most of the time it's to introduce your chapter to the legislators, let them know who you are, that you're here as a resource. If there are any big suicide prevention or mental health bills, you will be advocating for them. We let you know about that. We help you find any legislation that's out there. If there's not, you can host, we've had people host ice cream socials, we've had people host lunches, and then you break out and you do the meetings like we did yesterday, but it's in your capital. It's less walking. It's usually just one building. There's a couple of states that are a little bit more than that, but it's just this very small way to share your story with local lawmakers. So I do want to first turn it over to our volunteers, and they can explain the planning process for their state. We're going to start by having them each explain their day and what like a snapshot of their day looked like, and then I'll ask them some questions that will help you, and then we'll open it up to the question and answer. So Michelle, do you want to go first?
So our day, a lot of it fell to me because it was our first year. So one of the first things I would say is build that committee to help you. But our day, what our day looked like overall was we provided a breakfast, a Look What's Brewing breakfast for all of our lawmakers, and we spent the morning just addressing, who we are and what we do and getting the word out about AFSP in West Virginia. And then went on to our meetings, and we had some awareness tables set up from NAMI and Prevent Suicide West Virginia and a few other organizations that we had invited to take part in our day to show our partnership and collaboration. And so that was really overall what our day looked like.
Hi, Amy with Texas. First, I just want to encourage you that you were so much further ahead than I was. This is my first time at Advocacy Forum. So I planned the Texas State Capitol Day without ever coming here to DC and seeing this. So no, you were so much further ahead than I was. We kept it very simple this year, just as the first year. So we had a check-in that was just for everybody to come in. We actually had one of our representatives come and talk to us, and that was just, they volunteered that through scheduling appointments with her chief of staff, that was something she wanted to do because suicide is something she's very passionate about, and she is a new representative. So we did that, and then we had our appointments throughout the day. We had 50 appointments and then passed out another 135 folders. So that took up pretty much the whole day for our volunteers. We had about 25 volunteers come for the day. And so they did time with that, had lunch on their own within the Capitol, and just spent time passing out folders and making the appointments. And then we had a short wrap up, and that was what our day looked like. So it doesn't have to be really, really complicated for our first time.
Being with Alaska, we had quite a few different difficulties just because of our location with transportation and everything. So we ended up getting there on Monday. The event on Tuesday, we went through 60 legislators' office, 20 senators, 40 representatives, and that was full day on Tuesday. Wednesday, we had a follow-up meetings introduced on House and Senate floor, and then a lunch and learn. It basically just, like West Virginia, it fell on me because we had a very short list of advocates. So I had to recruit some very quickly, which worked very well at the end. But it was a 2-day event for us.
So a normal time frame, normally we would say you would plan the event between like 8 and 5 or 8 and 4. To get the volunteers there, you would do like a brief overview of AFSP, which we provide a script for you in that planning handbook. So it's like an advocacy 101, kind of like John and Trevor did on Monday here. And then you roll into appointments. If you have scheduled appointments, similar to the forum, you would have somebody scheduling those appointments ahead of time. We provide you with the information of those who registered. We give you a registration link from our office, and we keep track of who's registering, and we enter them into a Google spreadsheet that tells you who their legislators are, so you'll know which offices to reach out to. And we also give you a priority list of legislators, depending on what committee they sit on, if they're of interest to education or health, mental health. So you'll know, or whoever's making your appointments that day will know who to contact. So you bring your volunteers in the morning, you can give them a light breakfast, then do that welcoming and the overview, tell them about your chapter, because some of them might just be advocates who have never come to another chapter event before at all. They might have just found AFSP, signed up to be an advocate, and didn't even know that there was a chapter in your area. So definitely go over what your chapter does in your area with the volunteers that come that day, and also with the offices when you meet with them. Then you would give them each a schedule. You would print out a schedule. Folders, similar to here, it has all the information. We help you with any talking points or issue briefs if there is a bill in your state.
You also need a folder stuffing committee.
Yes, thank you.
Can I say
We
one
were
thing?
doing that at
Go
2
for
o'clock
it.
in the morning, my daughter and I, the night before.
I will say about the folder stuffing that just like the other two, that most of the stuff fell on me just because it was a first year and you're just sort of trying to get it done. But for folder stuffing, I didn't even have volunteers for that, so I just contacted a lot of my friends that aren't even associated with AFSP, and I was like, I will give you pizza, I'll give you wine, beer, whatever you need. You're right. And so I think it was a great way to get more people involved with AFSP who've never done anything, and they were so excited to help. Within an hour, we had 185 folders stuffed. Like, it was really simple. We sat around a huge table just stuffing folders, and it was nice to see people involved that wouldn't have been involved any other way. So I think there's get your friends involved.
Yeah.
I've heard of other people saying that they had like folder stuffing parties where they brought dinner in and just had a bunch of people in
Mine
one
didn't
location.
even want dinner. They were like, we're here to work. Just like, we're going to get it done.
Yeah.
And then they were...
But those folders are such an important part of your day, and they're literally the resources that you're leaving behind with what we do and who we are and why we do what we do. And so don't make light of what's going in those folders. That's a very important piece of what you're leaving behind. But it's a lot of work getting them stuffed. So make sure you recruit some help for that.
So they contain the national fact sheet, your state fact sheet, which we provide you. Well, we provide you the information. You would print
Everything.
it, right? You would print it on your own or buy it from the AFSP store. But the brochures about AFSP go in there, like sharing your story for the volunteers. You know, everything that basically you got today, but on a state level would go, or you got this week, would go in there. So I did want to go through and ask if you want to take turns talking about what worked really well with your days. Whoever wants to go first, go for it.
Sure.
Go.
Okay. What worked well was we had a lot of new people sign up as far as, this, like Amy said, these were people that weren't typically part of our chapter. They had never been to a walk. It was one of those things where I threw out a Facebook video, which totally out of my comfort zone, and said, hey, all you people that constantly tell me I want to share my story and I want to do something and I want to join you in this fight, I'm giving you a call to action right now and saying, come on. And I literally was sitting in my car with red eyes because I was so mad. I'd called Liz. I was the only one registered for my advocacy day 2 weeks prior. And so I just challenged the people in my state and said, you've been saying you want to do something. I'm challenging you to show up. You want to be a champion for this fight, do that. So that little video, that, minute and 30-second video had, 3,000 views in 3 days. And, again, it was way out of my comfort zone, but that was something that worked very well. Within a matter of days, I had 30 people registered. And again, it was them going out of their comfort zone. Another thing that worked well for me was that I did 2 conference calls with my people that were registered. And I literally went through what the day was going to be like. That I'd have a script for them. I was going to email that to them, just a few sentences, sent them my advocate story, a couple of different versions of that from my time here, and said, we're going to make this really easy for you. So that worked very well for us. The breakfast part worked very well because breakfast food is typically cheaper than lunch food, but ice cream would be cheap too. So, and I'm on a really limited budget in West Virginia. We don't raise a lot of money. So that was a good thing, other than you always have people show up that aren't, you have to be careful where you're feeding your lawmakers, because everyone that works at the Capitol may think that that's their food to eat for the day. So, but that did work. The breakfast did work well. Another thing that worked well for me was my sister and I took the K-Cups. You can buy a few hundred of those for really cheap. And we put Be the Voice stickers with the hashtag Stop Suicide on them. And then we used glue dots and put them on Make Mental Health a Priority postcards. And I hand wrote a note, which was painstakingly long, but just a sentence of, don't forget we're providing Look What's Brewing breakfast on AFSP State Advocacy Day. And I delivered those on Monday, and our day was on Friday. So I reminded them literally office to office delivering those, and literally almost, that was not a face-to-face visit prior to, but it was, hey, this lady came in our office and dropped this off, and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is providing breakfast for you later in the week. So that was a big what worked.
I think one of the biggest surprises of what worked is how receptive our representatives and senators were to meet with us. I had some volunteers to help schedule appointments, just like that happens here, but we didn't even have to call a ton, because when the email was sent from AFSP National Public Policy, I automatically got up to like 30 to 40 representatives and senator staff email me and say, please, when can you meet? We want to meet with you. And so I think that was very encouraging to me, as I felt very overwhelmed with this process of planning and like, how is this all going to work? But to see how receptive they were to want to talk to us gave me so much encouragement and so much energy to keep planning and keep doing what we did. And as I said, that got me in contact. One of the best parts was Sean Theory. She is the new representative from the Houston area. Her chief of staff called, emailed and said, can I meet with you even before the day? Representative Theory is very interested in suicide awareness and prevention and is wanting to start working on some bills for that. So I even met with him beforehand because he just didn't know. Like, they knew they would care about suicide awareness and prevention, but they didn't have a clue what they wanted to do with it. And so I think sometimes that was the best part, is just making those connections. Texas, we only meet every other year. So if we didn't meet this year, it wasn't going to happen for 2 more years. So knowing that we have those connections now to work in the off year of what bills can start being drafted and proposed in that off year in 2 years.
What worked well, the communication, especially with the national office in the beginning, to get a foundation of what to do, what to focus on. I tried to do this last year, and it fell apart because it was getting too late, and I learned it was supposed to be, you should do it earlier, but I'll get into that later. But what really worked well was, again, the communication. Senator Hoffman's office was great. I was able to, because it's a 2-flight, from Bethel to Juneau, I had to take 2 different flights to get there. So it was a half a day of traveling. So it wasn't easy getting down to the Capitol to do your flyers and to talk to people. So everything was done by email or telephones. But Senator Hoffman's office, his aide was, I sent him the flyers. He got it approved by both House and Senate, because we learned that anything that goes up needs to be approved by both sides, especially at Sergeant of Arms. But the communication is the key. We kept open communication with Senator Hoffman's office. They actually did the legwork, posted everything up, making recommendations to the hotel because we had to do the overnights. Got in touch with a travel agent that assisted us because his son had died by suicide, so he was on board, making sure that we had catering done. So actually everything with our advocacy day, but the communication went very well.
I have one just thing to add, and they kind of touched on that, and we're trying not to touch on the same things. So there's really a plan behind all this. Yeah, there's intentional stuff. Thank goodness for our public policy office putting together good things like that. But one of the things I want to touch on that works well, and you have to do this, it's crucial, is find your champion that's in the House or the Senate and or both, and make that be someone who maybe has a personal lived experience or personal loss experience, or someone who has pushed for some legislation previously that pertains to the work that we're doing, and invite that person to be your opening speaker. And if it's just briefly in your rotunda or whatever, because that gets a lot of people on board. And then find your champion to introduce your group of people while they're in session and on the floor. And if you're in, for our experience, we have a balcony that we have to sit in, on all 4 sides. But it's important for you to be acknowledged by everyone there, because still some people aren't going to come to that breakfast. Some people are going to read those emails or respond, and you never know who else is there that day that may need to know about us. So make sure that that you are recognized for being there within your capital, and that you find a champion on board that's an elected official to share a little bit openly and welcome that person into the AFSP family, because that's crucial moving forward.
Can I say, I want to just add one thing. It wasn't necessarily my best part, but hearing both of them talk about coffees and ice creams and stuff, none of the rooms we could have, you could bring food in. So it became sort of a challenge of what to do. I think that most of the rooms we could reserve in the Texas building, and we were in a Senate building actually, and we couldn't bring food into there. And so it was like, what do we do? So we couldn't provide breakfast even for the people coming to check in, but for lunch we could do vouchers that they could use in the cafeteria at the building, and so that worked really well. And then you saw groups of people meeting. So even if you come into some of those little roadblocks, because it was one of those panic moments for me, like, oh my gosh, I can't bring in box lunches, how am I going to feed all these people? There's ways, and that they're used to things like this and working with you. And so that there are ways around it if you hit some of those roadblocks.
And ask the public policy office because they know of all these other states that had all this amazing stuff happen.
I was gonna say there are some states where you can't, like Amy said, bring in food, and we're telling you to provide food for your attendees. Some states have met off-site, like out of the Capitol, across the street, at a hotel or a library, a church, anywhere that they can get a room, and then you can provide food there and do your welcoming and opening, and then walk over as a group. So there's always options. We can help you, work with your state for what best fits, the laws and the regulations around your state. I did want to say that Amy mentioned the email that went out from our office to the legislators. So we do that. We send out, when you tell us that you want to have a state capitol day, we try to get the date locked in as early as possible over the summer, fall time
That would be amazing.
frame.
That's under our what not to do section that we're going to cover.
We'll touch on that
Try.
in a minute.
That is what we recommend. And then we work with you to email your advocates from your state. We send an email out saying, we're really excited. This is happening in your state. This is the date. Here's the registration link. If we don't have all the details, we'll send out a save the date for you, just saying, details are to follow. And then we do the same for the legislators. We let them know that, AFSP Alaska will be at the Capitol on this date, and you should be hearing from a volunteer to schedule appointments in the near future. And we make your email address the reply to. So that's why she was getting those emails. So they were replying to my email, but they were going to her so she could coordinate the appointments, because it doesn't make sense for me to forward everything. So it just goes right to
And
you.
this falls under what works well is working with the public policy office and Liz and Nicole, because they make it very easy for you. I was more overwhelmed by the emails I was going to have to send, and they were like, "Oh, we do that."
Right. And so going into that, what challenges and what would you change for next time?
I would change. I had a huge statewide event 3 weeks prior to my Capitol Day. Don't do that. I'm often the perfect example of what not to do. I always do things the hard and the long way, and so that took away some of my focus. It took away some of my volunteers because I was expecting more of them, and it pushed me to my limits also, and my family. Sorry, Tristan. But the other thing was, one of those lessons learned thing was that this helped me plan a better day, because I knew the bigger picture from being here. So don't let it overwhelm you, that you don't know. Moving forward, in one of our things that happened was the session schedule changed that day, and every single one of our appointments got changed. So all those text messages, voicemails, and emails were coming to my phone, and my daughter can attest to, I literally had 24 unlistened to voicemails and over 100 unread text messages that day, and I couldn't even answer because all these volunteers were relying on me. I was the only one that knew what this day should look, sound, and feel like, and because of the national one. But we just did the best we could. We said, go make face-to-face contacts with those people, and when, those that could stay late, stayed late, and went and met with their people. But every single appointment for the day got changed or didn't happen. And so, I could have panicked and cowered in the corner and just cried and rolled myself down the steps, but I didn't. I said, it's okay, we're here, we're being present. But it was definitely a lesson learned. So, make those plans in pencil, because they're going to change.
Definitely plan to be flexible, because you'll have volunteers register to come and say they're coming and then not show up. We do ask, there's numerous emails that go out to the attendees that say, please let us know if you can't come, please let us know if something comes up. But just like any other event, there's going to be people that don't. But then you'll also have people that show up that didn't register.
Yeah, and that was a challenge for me personally. I told my volunteers the day before or the night before, if you text me in the morning and you're lost, I'm not going to be available. You've got to use your GPS in your phone, blah, blah, blah. And again, Tristan can tell you, my phone started going off at 5 o'clock that morning, because we were starting at 8 and meeting at 7. With people saying my anxiety is through the roof, I'm having a panic attack, I can't come today, and I lost about 15 people due to that. But you know what? Those people are part of the reason of why we do what we do. And I just said it's okay. And so one of the things that I probably need to pay attention moving forward for next year is that I need to handle with care some of my volunteers with lived experiences prior to that. And that's something, I don't have that experience, and I need to handle that a little better next year. I did have a care team, and that was another good thing that worked. A lot of times at our national events, we have a care team, and so I had a care team there of people that couldn't really advocate and couldn't really lobby because they get federal funding, and so I made name tags for them that were different color from the rest of ours, and it said we were part of the AFSP care team with a big red heart on them. And I made sure that my volunteers knew that, you know, those people were available to them if they needed a hug or a cry or to get away for a minute. So that's another good thing.
My lessons learned, the first thing, the handbook from the national office is amazing.
It's your Bible.
Yes. I did learn that I should have read through the whole thing before.
What, we were supposed to do that?
I know, right? I think it was the night before, and I'm like looking something up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I not read this before? Because it just started rolling. I would start earlier too. I didn't even become a board member with AFSP for Central Texas chapter until August of last year, and I came on and was like, I really care about advocacy. And they're like, great, you're going to be over the committee and plan Texas State Capitol Day in the spring. And I was like, okay, no big deal, because I didn't know better. So starting early is key. Also, I think one of the biggest things, I don't know if there's many people here who are perfectionists. I definitely am, and I struggle from not thinking things are good enough. And I still, like, just hearing things, it's like, I should have done this different, and to realize that good enough makes a difference.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. You know,
Write that down.
And I just have to remind myself that no matter what happened that day, that our message got out, people shared their stories, and people listened. And so I think that's the one thing I would want you to take away too, that it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to look like it does here. It doesn't have to look like what anything we
They make
said.
it look easy here.
They do. But just know that good enough will make a difference in a lot of lives. And then the next time you can add on to it. So your first time, just survive it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big challenges I had was trying to partnership for, in Alaska we have the State Suicide Prevention Coalition. And I emailed them saying, hey, you know, you're going to have a public forum, open call, this is what AFSP chapter is doing, our chapter is doing. And they allowed me on the phone conference, and I went on the public and talked to them and what our mission was. The goal was just to let them know, the legislators know that we're up here, we're a resource, and I was shut down. Automatic, don't do this, we don't want you there, stuff. And man, talk about being boiling. I emailed Liz Dennis, our chairperson for the chapter. I got home that night and I was still fuming. But I had a good mentor who, she was also on the phone call, and she lived in Anchorage. And she's Athabascan, another tribe out in the Juneau area. And she lost her son, and she was furious as well. And I just kept Facebook and text messaging her for a good 2 hours. And at the end, it was, I actually had a great support for this from her, Barbara Franks. And the next morning, I emailed the State Suicide Prevention Coalition and saying, you know what, this is the date, this is the time, I've got the room, you can be there if you want, we're doing it. A day later, I got all these email support letters from, if you want anything, let us know. If you want support, let us know. One of the senators who sat on that committee said, we won't have time for you. Another challenge was we had booked appointments for 15, 30 minutes, and we had certain people we were going to target. Even though we hit all 60 offices, the poor advocates, I gave them all the pamphlets, and I said, get to all the rooms that we don't have people going to. But the senator that was the most vocal, we don't want you here, kept us in her office for an hour. Made us a little late for the meeting with the governor, and she didn't care. We said that we had X amount of time. She didn't care about the governor. I want to talk. Let's talk about this. And she was full supportive with us. That kept us in the office for an hour. So the challenges were, you're going to have people who are going to block you or attempt to block you. If you really believe in stopping suicide and being the voice, be the voice and do it.
Do it anyway.
Do it anyways. We had a fantastic day. What I would do different, I didn't have enough advocates. Another challenge was Dennis at the last minute had a family emergency who was going to come with us, the board chairperson. So that left one person less. I was the only one who knew about AFSP with the field advocates. So we did a very brief Advocacy 101 on Monday night with a banquet and the same films that we saw here. And did a crash course because the internet out in Alaska is up and down so much.
Right. And we do try to make it to as many first year events as our office can make it to. So you will have our support the day of as well, usually, unless something comes up and we can't be there, but we do plan to be at all first year events. And then,
Can I say something?
Yes.
That was very encouraging. John came to ours, and to just have him appreciate what we were doing, and the whole staff was so encouraging throughout it, and just telling us we were doing a good job and letting us know that whatever we were doing was making a difference. And so that just is extremely helpful, the support you get from the public policy office.
And this is as important as a walk. We can't fund the mission without walk dollars, and we can't move forward without advocacy.
And I'll say too, being here has been great, but your state capitol day is just as important as these last 3 days. And just like the representative said today, like there's a lot that happens on the state level, and I think sometimes we get caught up because it's DC and it gets so much more attention, but that your state capitol day can make huge changes in what happens every day to the citizens of your state.
and you're going to bring with you on those meetings, our list of public policy priorities for a state level. So if there is a legislator that's interested that might not have heard about AFSP, kind of like happened in Texas, you can give them our priorities and say, we can work with you. We have a lot of model legislation. We can tell you states that this has worked in, and we can give you the language of the bills that were passed, on any topic that we advocate for. And that seems to be really helpful. And especially, having that talk in the beginning with your volunteers so that they're knowledgeable enough. And same as we tell you, if you don't know the answer, we tell them, let them know it's okay to say, I don't know the answer, I'll get back to you. And there is going to be, everybody gets a follow-up email with the links to let us know how their visits went, just like you'll get from here, and an event evaluation about the day. So it's very similar to here, it's just on a smaller scale. Before I go over to helpful tips, I did want Michelle and Jim, if you could talk about, Michelle, your display that you did, and then Jim, the Wednesday program that you did, because that was just little different takes on state capitol days. Sometimes they're one day, sometimes they're just, you go in, you do your meetings. Michelle did a wonderful display. Some states do, displays on the Capitol steps. We had
Which you need
Arkansas.
permits for.
You need permits. for.
Don't ask me how I know.
We've seen, where they set up quilts, or you could set up memorial signs. Luminaries was in one state. So Michelle did do something I'll let her talk about, and then Jim did a program the day after that I'll let him talk about.
So I've, as a result of my national work with AFSP, I've become close with some people who've been doing this for a while. And Tyler from Arkansas had done a shoe display previously. And so I got the bright idea that I was going to do 340 pairs of shoes on our Capitol steps facing the most heavily trafficked road, because that's how many West Virginians we lost to suicide in 2015 in West Virginia. And so one thing to keep in mind was I had to be very careful with children's shoes. I didn't want the children's shoes because people will give you all kinds of shoes that they want to get rid of. And so we had a beautiful display, but we were very careful with, men's shoes, women's shoes, children's shoes, because we didn't want it to look false, or we didn't, you have to be careful with that because, and I'm sorry for using this language, but you have to be careful not to be doing trauma vomit, or what I call trauma vomit. And so you want to be accurate with your statistics when you're making a display about the lives that you're representing, if you're using lives lost. Next year I'm going to use as part of my display, our suicide rates have decreased, thankfully, just a little, but I'm going to put the number of shoes that we know that we decreased by off from those shoes next spring when I do my Capitol Day, looking back at the Capitol and say this many lives were saved this year. So I think that'll add to our display. I didn't publicize the display enough. There were a lot of our lawmakers that missed it, but that is still getting shared. I think I got 6 notifications just yesterday where the photos from that display are still being shared. My advocacy day was in March. So that was important. And then we had a wonderful thing happen. I didn't have a clue what I was going to do with the shoes after I had them, and it was really hard for me to get 340 pairs of used stinky shoes to my Capitol, but I did it. But my whole Suburban was full. And when I checked into the hotel, one of the bellhops came to help me, and he said, "What are you going to do with these shoes after?" And I said, "I don't have a clue. I just need them tomorrow. I'll worry about it tomorrow." But a couple of people have donated those to Salvation Army and stuff, and he said, "Well, actually, I have a shoe ministry. My church has a shoe ministry. I'll take them off your hands." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." And it worked out perfectly. And he cried and I cried, and it was a wonderful thing. But the display was crucial. And we saw many people come forward and take their pictures with those shoes and hold up signs, that said your life matters. And, we had parents that stood with those shoes and said, "My kid was one of those last year." And that was very powerful. That was very powerful. And those are people that weren't affiliated with our chapter that are now. But it's, so having some type of a display, whether it be roses, tags, and I tagged the shoes. I painstakingly made kind of a generic tag that said, I was an 8th grader. I worked my entire career in the coal mine, because I have the honor and privilege of sitting sometimes on our death review board and reading those files in regards to who we lose. And so I wanted to not put names, but to put, life back into those lives that we lost. And that was very important.
One of another shoe display that we saw this year in Utah was military boots.
Yes.
And they had 2 uniformed soldiers standing guard of the shoes the entire day. So it was very powerful. They had the information. Yes.
Just a quick question. When you said you needed to be careful, do you mean like tactfully careful, or?
I didn't want the children's shoes to far outweigh the adult shoes, and I wanted to make sure that if we lost 30 middle schoolers, that I had approximately 30 middle school age appropriate shoes. I didn't want, because people will give you I had tons of shoes I had to get rid of. I wanted 340 pair, and I had over 1,100 pair in my foyer in a matter of 3 days. And so I literally went through them and said, because I didn't want it to look like 200 pairs of those shoes were children's shoes. So that's what I meant in being careful and pay attention to
Accurate with
the statistic and what those are actually representing. And it's a little extra work, but it's worth it.
Okay, so Jim, you can go.
On our second day, on Wednesday, we did some follow-up meetings in the morning, and then got introduced on the House and Senate floor. And then at about 11 o'clock, we all went down. We had a room reserved in the state capitol where we were given permission to do a presentation on suicide prevention. I was going to do one on Talk Saves Lives. Now, I don't know how many of you have done Talk Saves Lives, but you try to get it done within 45 minutes. So thank God for John Madigan. I was trying to figure out what do I cut, what do I do to make it 45 minutes, because we only had 1 hour in that room. We had ordered 70 box lunches, and they were delivered. Everything went on time. We ran out of box lunches. It was over 100 folks, standing room only in that room. It was the largest crowd the state capitol ever saw, with the legislators and their aides coming down. So I did a Talk Saves Lives presentation, which was broadcast throughout the entire state of Alaska on Alaska 360, which is their political, and everybody watches their political channel. villages and everything. So it doesn't matter what we call RAT TV, the Rural Alaska TV. So it's broadcast everything, cable and on RAT TV. We also presented Senator Hoffman, since he was a really strong supporter in getting the room booked and secured, our certificate of appreciation in a AFSP hoodie, which we showed him live in front of everybody. But we did hold the suicide prevention training in front of everybody. With that, we got a lot more response, more trainings in other areas of Alaska. Now I got to come up with other people to do the trainings. But we did that presentation, and then we did some follow-up because we had other people asking, can you come back and talk to us after that presentation?
So both very powerful additions onto the State Capitol Day. So before we open it up to a question and answer, I did want to go through and see if you had any helpful tips that you haven't already given, just to help plan the day.
Are your advocates, if you've not had a State Capitol Day previously, they're going to need their advocate stories, just like you did for here. And it's, don't make light of helping them do that. You know, it's hard to condense your story into a few sentences and help them. If you have to go through, I did the majority of my advocate stories, and and then let them review it. And they said, I look fat in that picture. I want to send you another one. And even though I'd already printed it, I did it again because I wanted them to love to hand that out to their people. And so and I said, let's make this more powerful. Give your people those power if it takes a little more effort from you. And again, that goes back to planning earlier, and because I was printing off advocate stories late. But make it easy for them to do that. The easier you make it for them, the less anxious they're going to be. Their advocate story is very powerful. One of the best things of my day was at the end of the day, I used the little silver lapel AFSP life preserver pins, and I pinned my advocates. I handed, we hugged and we handed each one of those individuals, a pin and said, welcome to the family. And so that was an incredibly powerful part of our day. And so it was one of those things where, every piece of it came together, but make sure that you're not making light of what those individuals are doing any more than how powerful it is for you to be here. It's just as important to let those people know how crucial it is that they showed up for your event. And don't make light or take those people that showed up, for granted.
Be organized. I am a highly detailed, organized person. Maybe that's where the perfectionism comes from. But I mean, from stuffing the folders to schedules, how here when you went with your state and you got a list of all the appointment times, I went ahead because I didn't know any different because I've never been here. I scheduled appointments for everybody. Like I put the people's names, I divided them into teams, however many appointments I had, people, I made it work. So when they came in, I gave them a packet, their own packet, and it had, these are your 4 or 5 appointments, this is who else is on your team, and here's all your folders. It took more work on my end, but it just made it so much easier. I made sure that they got to meet with the representative or senator if we had an appointment with them from their area so that they could represent their area. But besides that, I just scheduled them with what we had left. If they wanted to end up trading some, I didn't care, but that way I knew everything was covered and I didn't need to take time for them to decide where they're going. And a lot of them were overwhelmed anyway.
Yeah, don't make them do it alone. You know how overwhelming it is here to go to an appointment alone. Pair them up with someone, even if they're not with their right constituent or whatever. Let them be a team, and that helps them create a support network of their own amongst our AFSP family. So please don't make them do that.
And like Amy said, you might have to move them around. So there's different, forms that you could use, and there's different examples in the State Capitol Day handbook on different ways that you can pass out those schedules. But we might not know that, Michelle is friends with Amy and they're coming, but they live in 2 different areas, so they're in 2 different groups. But if they get there and they're friends and they want to go together, try to make that work because that's going to make them comfortable.
Yeah.
And to help with the no-shows, because I knew that was going to happen, if people hadn't emailed me back or had not been on the conference call 3 days before, I made sure they were in a group of 3, not 2. And so that I made sure at least one person in each group, I was positive they would be there. So I didn't have to try to fill empty appointment times. And so that just helped me the day of, because I wasn't scrambling then of who's going to cover these 3 or 4 appointments. So make sure each group has at least one person you are without a doubt know they're going to be there.
Can I go back on one thing?
Yes.
As far as my date last on Wednesday, how we ended, Alaska is very culturally acceptable as far as what tribe you're in. I made sure, and what we did at the end, we did a blessing song with the Yupik folks that I brought with me. So we did we were on different Tlingit land, but we got permission from the governor and lieutenant governor to do a Yupik blessing song. So we were very culturally acceptable on what Alaska accepted, what they don't and do, because we would have been in big trouble if we didn't ask or didn't make some kind of connection with the culture that we came from. The best tips, I think, as far as the handbook that we get, there's a spreadsheet, and it breaks down from day 1, day 2, a month do this, a month do that, who's in charge.
Follow it.
Yeah.
Read it before.
Read it 3 times.
But that spreadsheet is awesome. You can change it as it's in Google Docs.
It's in Google Docs, yeah.
And it tells you step by step what to do, when to do the folders, when to order things, when to make the calls. That is the greatest help.
It is. Thank you for that.
That made it so easy. I don't know how many, those old sheets were, oh my God, I can't do this. But this one made it so easy that you can follow.
It's color coordinated. There's notes on the side that say, who did this job? Tell me some notes about it. What day did you do this job? So that anybody that's planning it can log in and see, so if something was ordered and it didn't come, you can go to that person and say, who did you order this through, or what happened with that? So and our office goes in and checks. So if we see something hasn't been done, we can get in touch with you. Hey, do you need help with this? I saw that you weren't able to get this far
They had to
yet.
call me a few times and say, hey, what are you doing?
We do check in.
Because I didn't have time to update my Google Docs.
Or more like, Amy, have y'all scheduled a date yet?
Yeah, I got that too.
So it helps us keep tabs. It helps other people planning keep tabs. Your field staff gets access to it also, so they can help out if they see something maybe is overwhelming or you can't get to it. So definitely utilize the Google folder. Everything, your state gets its own Google folder. Everything that you need is in there. All of the links that you'll be sending out to your attendees is in there. The spreadsheet, the registered attendees gets updated once a week by our office for you to check. And then once we update that, we go in and we update the spreadsheet on what appointments you should be making. So everything is just right in one spot for you, for anybody that's on your planning team, just to access and go. All of the documents that you would want to send, like the vignette template or how to share your story safely, all of that is also included, your state fact sheet, the national fact sheet. In case somebody asks you, can you email me this ahead of time? Once we get your talking points, that goes in there. And then we also plan calls with you to check in and see how it's going. So you're not on your own planning this. We do check in with conference calls.
Yeah.
To see what's going on.
One of the things, Tristan, my daughter, just texted me from the back of the room and said, hey, don't forget about this. And one of the things Tristan said about going off of the support that we receive from the Public Policy Office, do not hesitate to lean on them. They're there for us. They're there for you. And like Tristan said, she chaired an Out of the Darkness campus walk in the state. She received afterwards 2 handwritten postcards from our AFSP national office, and that stuff's important. So, handwrite your volunteers and your advocates a card, even if it's a postcard or a note, just thanking them later. And I need to do that when I go home because it's something I haven't done. And it's not going to matter that it's June and it was in March. I know they're just going to be glad to get that from me. So I need to make that a priority when I get home.
When we leave here, they're going to be telling you the national office will be keep in touch with with these senators and reps here. What I had done prior to was I also emailed my 2 senators and representatives saying we are going to hold a state capitol day event. We would love for you to participate in the training or the box lunch or whatever, or the overnight or the community walk that we have. But I did send out the emails to both Senator Murkowski, Sullivan, and Don Young. Surprisingly, they sent 3 different reps to our state capitol day, which was, I was totally surprised, but they did send a rep, and they even followed up in our meetings yesterday. Did anybody show up? Which was great, and I had their names and everything. Let them know, let your local folks know when your walks are. We've had a walk in Alaska now for 7 years, and in the last 6 years, we never had any of the local representatives show up. We had senators show up. We even had the Governor Walker give a shout out. He was not able to be there, but he gave a shout out to the walk that we held. So let them know what your events are, and then really encourage them while you're doing your state advocacy day.
We did a generic postcard, and it was just on paper because cardstock's more expensive. But I did 4 on a sheet that had all of our walk dates across the state, and we stuck that inside every folder.
We do encourage you to do that. In the folders that you're leaving behind, put events that are coming up. There's also a template for a chapter information card that just has your contact information on it. That is available to you, that's in that link packet that I was talking about. But we do, you know, and you can work with us to get that done if you need to by sending the dates of your upcoming events. But just something in there so that they can see, you know, what area is this event going to be in, and can I send somebody there? And it doesn't have to be specific to the office. You could list them all. They can, you know, sort it out to which ones they can attend. So we do want to open it up to questions for either myself or any of the volunteers up here.
What page do you want me to start on?
We only have 10 minutes left, so.
Okay, so as far as your budgets, what did you guys estimate?
So it really depends on the chapter. We do ask that you work with your field staff to determine that, and then let us know what you're working with. So that would be the question that you first go to a field staff with.
Okay, and as far as advocates coming up, I know that some people are like, if they're far away, if they're in the eastern part of the state and they come up, what about hotel rooms, things like that, if you're there late?
Right, so we've had states that have had that same dilemma, and some states have gotten a hotel to give a discount to, and then get a discount code, like if you're walking the overnight here and you have that discount code, and just share that with them. Some states have organized buses to take people to and from if it's a far distance. It really depends on your budget. If you can afford to pay for some people's rooms, you can.
I couldn't,
Yeah.
Right, so it all depends on the budget that you're
but I'm
able
going to work
do.
for that next year.
In Texas, we have many different chapters, and so it was up to the chapter if they were going to fund their hotels. And I didn't have time, like I said, it was just fly by the seat of my pants, but I gave them a list of like area hotels around the Capitol and how far they were away and the average price, so they could determine what the budget was if their individual chapter wasn't going to fund it.
And we did, I made the reservations for whoever was coming as an advocate, and I believe, Liz, you sent a link for the airfare for
Right.
the airlines. So Alaska budgeted $10,000
About 10,000. Okay.
for us because we
And that
had,
was different for Alaska.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Because we
Alaska is
had-
much different from many of our states.
yeah, because we had to do the airfare plus
Yeah.
all this other stuff. So
And thank you for answering that. And then as far as advertising, when you guys start, how soon in advance did you start advertising, or did you? Besides social media?
Well, I mean, the public policy team sends out an email to all the advocates once your day is set. And so that's any registered advocate with AFSP. And so that was the main source of advertisement for us. We also made sure all the board chapters, the boards for each chapter in Texas knew about it so they could promote it within
And
there.
you can also send it out in a constant contact to anybody that's like walked or attended.
Yeah,
another
we sent it to our walkers.
Okay.
yep.
Yeah.
And then, with the military shoes, I think you touched on that, Liz. How many booths were up there at that time?
They did it by their states.
Because they knew their state statistic.
Okay, and you would be able to.
We can help you.
provide that for us?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Michelle, will you just come and just coordinate ours?
Where are you at? Are you in a sunshine state where it's warm all year? Yes.
No.
If you're in deep snow, no, I'm sorry, I'm busy that day.
Come to Iowa.
I've never been to Iowa, but I would go there.
Yes.
Something I was just gonna add, I know not everyone has this to their advantage, but in West Virginia, I mean, can't even count the amount of representatives that I've known since I was little, and we really use that to our advantage. And I mean, some of our advocates that came had 15 folders, and I've got like 40. Mom, why'd you give me 40?
Because she knows those people.
Like, you know, and then I'm running into people that I've known since I was 4 or 5 years old. I'm like, oh, hey, this is why I'm here. So that just really something that helped us was just, you know, whether it's somebody that you don't know or somebody that you've known your entire life, using it to your advantage and just making sure that they know.
And when the registration link goes out, there is a section that asks, do you have any relationships with any lawmakers? Because if they do, we want to hook them up with that person. So we want to know ahead of time, and most people do put it in there, and then we just make sure that they are able to attend those meetings also. Yes.
If we have appointments with legislators outside of State Capitol Day, can you still provide us with some of the things that you're talking about?
Yes.
Like that. One of the big mistakes we made in Virginia was we thought we were going for a photo op with the governor, and it turned into an hour sit down with him.
Oh my goodness.
And we were not prepared because we're only a 2-year-old chapter, and we didn't know what
Right.
kind of legislation to propose. And so we want to make sure that never happens again. And since I'm new in my job too, I've been asked by several legislators already to meet with them now so that they can propose legislation.
Right.
And I'm saying it's too early because I don't have any of that in my hands yet.
Right. So
I never
anytime-
don't have AFSP materials in my vehicle.
No, we had AFSP materials. We did not. But
Like
we did
policy
not have
related?
policy.
Oh, okay.
So we had ideas for
Yeah.
policy. But
Right.
we didn't know if it was realistic.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just want policy information that we can implement
Yeah.
in Virginia.
So anytime that you have a official reach out to you that wants to meet or wants information, just let us know. You could call us,
Yeah.
email us, and we will get you a whole pile of
And be
information.
prepared even if you just think it's a photo op because you never know.
Yeah.
It's much more than that.
Yes. We have about 5 minutes left. Yes.
Michelle, you mentioned you had NAMI there too.
Yes.
So how did that work? You just invited them?
Invited them. My NAMI representative, they actually have me on the board. We're trying to get a NAMI West Virginia started, and I know in some states they don't. Not all organizations work well together, but I'm very blessed that we do have that. And she came. She's an incredible speaker. My NAMI person has a personal story. Former Olympic athlete, blah blah blah, and but she came and she set up her table, and we took pictures with her on the steps, and we showed the incredible importance of us being stronger together.
So, because we did our first one, and we had a rally organized by different organizations, and there were so many people, and that completely distracted from our.
Okay, well, and then another thing that I did in my planning was I made sure when I checked the schedule that there was nothing else going on that day, and I made it our AFSP day, and then I invited those other organizations to be part of our day. That was one of the things. Liz and Nicole called me, and they're like, okay, is this AFSP and Prevent Suicide West Virginia State Capitol Day? And I'm like, nope, it's AFSP day, and they are partnering in with us. So we were I made sure that we were selfishly the big picture, but that we brought in these others.
You have good relationships, so then
Yeah.
or like crisis centers and what's in your local area.
Yeah.
Right? So don't want to.
So invite them to your day and
So
just
there's
word it like
different-
that.
Yeah, and there's different ways that you can do it. If
Yeah.
you have really good working relationships with them, you can partner together, but start the planning together from the beginning.
Yeah.
Were those people part of you mentioned a care team that you had? for
Yes,
your advocates?
my Prevent Suicide West Virginia crew, which receives federal funding through Garrett Lee Smith Act, they were my care team.
Okay.
And they're in the field doing the work every day, unlike myself as a volunteer. They were my care team. And that gave them something to do. But they're all trained in how to do an intervention. And, you know, I had an individual that needed some care, they needed a lot of care that day. But you know, because even at a state capitol day, we have an obligation to keep our volunteers safe. And we need to make sure that we're doing this work safely for those of us with personal experiences.
What about like corporate sponsors? You guys try to find corporate sponsors?
I didn't plan ahead in time to do that, but
No.
that's
I mean,
something moving forward.
I think that's the part of the lessons learned of what to do. And, you know, I think, honestly, I think your first time too is just getting through it and, you know, set those reasonable expectations and knowing that it's just important to do it, to just start, that I think we could wait around for a long time. I'm glad I got pushed in this year, that I didn't have the option of delaying it 1 year, because you just have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And be
That'd be-
careful with your state capitol day event, because some of the state capitals will not, if you're gonna go in there for one purpose, they do not, let's say like the box lunches, I had to make sure that the caterer's name and logo was not
On
to be
anything,
seen
yeah.
or anything.
Right.
So if you have a corporate sponsor, they may ask you to put their logo or whatever, but check with your Capitol.
Yeah, and when you're scheduling your event, like I didn't even know that. And my sister worked in the Capitol for 12 years. That's a very comfortable place for me. But I didn't know that I needed to fill out an application to have a Capitol Day, and all of this paperwork to do that I wasn't aware of ahead of time. And thankfully, Liz and them were able to help me with that.
And that's like why we didn't have a display or anything, because the space was already filled. Like for Texas, it goes very, very quickly.
Right.
And since we only meet every other year, it's like it is prime time when we had it in February. And so you have to plan early if you want to have a display table or anything like that.
And I had a display on the steps and never thought about the danger of what could possibly happen until the police showed up and said, "Excuse me, lady, what are you doing?" When I had 10 people out there setting up garbage bags full of shoes. And they let me keep it there, thankfully.
So definitely check with the Capitol.
What not to do.
On what's permitted, what's not permitted. We can help you if you need help getting in touch with somebody at the Capitol building. We can help you. We can either give you the contact number or reach out for you. But definitely, we want, and some of them only have certain caterers that they work with that they let you bring in.
Yeah,
so
that was
we
my
have
situation.
to find out, so that everybody's okay on their day and make sure. But I think we do have to wrap up. So thank you all for coming, and
Thanks for allowing us to
Thank
be
you.
the example of what to
Thank
and
you.
not to do.
Really.